Okay, so picture this. A brand new movement, but instead of trying to get as many members as possible, they actively try to keep people out. Sounds crazy, right? Well, that's exactly the strategy we're digging into today. It all comes from the book The Discovery of Enlightenment, and it's a fascinating story about how rejecting growth might be its own kind of power. So, the book we're pulling from is this one right here, from 1992. It's called The Discovery of Enlightenment. The author is Ryuho Okawa, and he's the founder of a group called Happy Science, or Kofuku no Kagaku in Japanese. And this book, well, it really lays out the blueprint for their very, very unusual start. And that really is the central puzzle here, isn't it? I mean, you start a new movement, especially a spiritual one, and your goal is usually growth, growth, growth. But these guys, they did the complete opposite. They put up walls to keep people out. So you have to ask, what on earth was the point? All right, to figure this out, we've got to get inside the founder's head. You have to understand the problem he thought he was solving. He looked around at the spiritual scene in the late 20th century and, well, he did not like what he saw. He saw a major problem, and he believed it needed a pretty radical fix. So what was the problem? He basically saw the spiritual world as, well, kind of cheap. He called it populist and vulgar. He felt like all these other groups were just churning out this, crude, mass-produced stuff. It was all about quantity, not quality. Just get as many people in the door as possible, even if it meant watering everything down. And on top of that, he thought they were totally closed-minded, unwilling to be challenged. And really, his whole critique boils down to this one idea he called populism. He felt like everyone else was just playing to the cheap seats, catering to the lowest common denominator and turning spirituality into some kind of cheap, mass-market product. Yeah, he even used a phrase that translates to crude mass production. It's like he saw spirituality being made on an assembly line, just low-quality stuff sold in bulk. And he was determined to create the complete opposite. So, okay, that's the problem he saw, this cheap spiritual marketplace. What was his solution? He designed a totally new approach. And the key thing is, it wasn't designed to attract people. It was designed to filter them out. And his whole solution was built around this one key idea, honmono shiko. It basically means being authenticity-oriented. It's all about focusing on the real thing, real substance, real quality, not just cheap stuff designed for mass appeal. And you can see the difference right here. It's night and day. On one side, you've got the old way, what he saw as the problem, mass-produced, populist, all about quantity over quality. But his new way, totally different. It's authenticity-oriented, all about quality over quantity. And it wasn't for everybody. It was for the serious seeker. And get this, to really hammer the point home, they started calling themselves a graduate school of life. And that was totally intentional. The founder said that using the words graduate school would make it sound difficult. And that was the whole point. He hoped it would scare off anyone who wasn't 100% committed. Okay, so that's the philosophy. But how do they actually do it? I mean, this wasn't just talk. It led to a real, concrete strategy for membership. And it was incredibly restrictive. Back in 1987, you couldn't just walk in and sign up. No way. First, you had to read more than 10 of the founder's books. Only after you did that could you even apply. And then your application would go through a screening process. The whole thing was designed to be a huge hurdle to clear. And the goal wasn't a secret. The founders said it out loud. He wanted to cut down potential membership by 75 to 80%. Think about that. His target was only about 100 new members a year. It's just the most backward way you could possibly think of to build a new organization. Which, of course, leads to the big question. Did it actually work? Did all this filtering, this focus on quality over quantity, really get them the kind of high-caliber members they were looking for? Well, according to the founder, the answer was a big yes. And he had the numbers to back it up, from an exam they gave to new members to see if they were really getting it. So they gave this exam to about 2,000 of these hand-picked members, and the average score was a 93%. That's incredible. But even crazier, nearly a quarter of them, 436 people, got a perfect score, 100%. For the founder, this was all the proof he needed. His system was working. It was building this core group of super knowledgeable, super dedicated followers. But here's the thing. This wasn't just about creating some small, exclusive club. All this effort, all these high standards, it was all part of a much bigger, much more ambitious plan.
See, the end game wasn't to stay small forever. The plan was to use this elite group of members as a kind of lever to change the entire spiritual world from the inside out.
So here's how they thought it would work. First, you set an impossibly high standard that attracts only the most serious intellectual members. Then, this elite group becomes what he called a silent critique of all the other groups out there. The idea was that their sheer quality would be a challenge to everyone else, forcing them to up their game, and that would kickstart a reform across the whole spiritual landscape. At its core, the whole model was based on this one idea that real influence doesn't come from being the biggest, it comes from being the best. By creating something that was just undeniably excellent, they hoped they could literally pull the entire field up with them. And that's what we're left with, this really provocative question. It just goes against everything we think we know about how movements are supposed to grow, right? It makes you wonder, can an idea actually change the world more effectively, not by letting everyone in, but by being incredibly careful about who gets to walk through the door in the first place?